So today, what we're doing is Rachel and Emmanuel are going to come. They're going to talk about talking about Jesus in a different culture than ours, in Rwanda. So I want to give the shortest history I can possible to this. So many of you were not a part of our congregation when God first started calling us to partner with churches in Africa and sharing the gospel in Africa. So this is the way it happened. My wife and I had just gotten married in November of 2002. And in February of 2003, just a few months later, this church thought it would be a really good idea to send Lisa and I to the Promise Keepers Pastors Conference in Phoenix, Arizona. Well, I think it's always a good idea to go to Phoenix, Arizona in February. Don't you? So I said, sure, I'd love to go to Phoenix in February. And there's a Promise Keepers Pastors Conference. So we went to this. It was held at what was then Bank One Ballpark. I don't know what it's called now, but it's where the Arizona Diamondbacks play. Beautiful stadium. And you know what? The conference was okay. Like that's the best thing I can say about it. Like it was okay. The speakers were all like famous people, top-notch speakers, said good things, but I didn't sense that there was, like, why was I here? Why was I here? I felt that way so it was a 3-day conference. So it's the end of the third day, and I'm like kind of shrugging my shoulders. Well, the last speaker on the last day happened to be a man named Bruce Wilkinson. And Bruce Wilkinson got up, and he was talking about how God had called him to Africa. Like, he knew nothing about Africa at all. Like, he really didn't. He refused the call at first because he said, I don't know anything about Africa. So he just said no. But God was moving on him. So he shared his story of how God had called him to Africa. And I was engaged, I was enthralled, I was intrigued. And at the end of the message, he said, God may be calling some of you to Africa. And he said, what I would like for you to do is, if you believe God's calling you to Africa, I want you to stand up and come forward as an indication that sometime over the course of the next year, you will prepare to go to Africa to serve in some way. And I'll tell you what, I felt the conviction of the Holy Spirit on me. It was strong on me. And when he said, I want you to stand up and come forward, I stood up and I turned to my wife and I said, I got to go. And I know, just what it sounds like. And she said, I know. That's what she said, I know. And I said, because it can mean other things, I said, no, I mean to Africa. And she said, I know. And so I responded to that call. When I came home, so here's a little bit more of the story. Our church was laboring in terms of mission involvement and in terms of partnering with people doing mission work around the globe. And we supported some things, but we weren't really engaged. But we were praying for God to show us. Like, God, what do you want us to do? Like, we'll do whatever you want us to do. Show us where you want us to be. Show us how you want us to engage. And I believe that this was it. So when I came home, I didn't know how to relay this to the congregation. I didn't know how to relay this vision to the congregation. So I thought, I just want them to hear the same thing I heard. So I got the Bruce Wilkinson video, and we watched the Bruce Wilkinson message on the screen, and I wanted them to hear what I had heard, and so they did. So when the service was over, when the message was over, I started talking, and I just said, I really don't know what God wants us to do. And I said, I don't even know what I'm asking you to do. I think we need to take this step. I think God is calling us to be engaged in Africa, and I want us to. I think I might have asked them to stand if they were in agreement. But one of the things I said was, I'm not even asking for money. Like I said that. Like I don't know what I'm asking us to do, but I'm not even asking for money right now. And wouldn't you know it, there was a man in our congregation at the time named Pete Beekner. And so we had, back in those days, we had a pulpit up here, a big wide one, and we had a really nice altar table that was down here in front. And Pete's a little bit hard of hearing, so he might have thought I said I was asking for money, because he brought money up and he laid it on the altar table. While I was still talking. And so Pete put some money on the altar table, and so not wanting to miss an opportunity, I said, I want to revise my remarks. I said I wasn't asking for money, but we're not going to refuse it either. So by the time that Sunday morning was over, we had $2,000. The people came and laid on the altar for mission work in Africa. And that launched us. Like that got us going. And over the course of time, we went to Africa several times. We, meaning myself and another parishioner, I took 3 different people with me to Africa in different years. And one of those men that went with me said, I think we need to have a year-round presence in Africa. Like someone from our church needs to be in Africa year-round. And it sounded like a great vision, but it never materialized until today. So Rachel and Emmanuel, in just a moment, they're going to come and share. And so Emmanuel's new to our church since he got married to Rachel. Rachel's actually been a part of our church since she was 9. And so she's done some growing up here, and they're responding to God's call.
Kibagora is a small rural town located near a beautiful lake called Kivu in the western province of Rwanda. The town is home to Kibagora Hospital, a nationally renowned Christian healthcare institution which started as a small dispensary by missionaries in 1942.
Nitwa Mukandutiye Tamari, mfite imyaka 67, ndubatse, mfite abana 6. Nageze hano muri Kibagora mfite imyaka 20 ariho nkirangiza kwiga, nje gukora mu bitaro bya Kibagora. Nsanga hari abamisiyoneri ba mbere, muganga twakoranye mukuru yari Dr. Snyder. Rero mu byo batumenyesha kandi natwe twabonaga batubwiraga ko baje bafite misiyo yivuga butumwa. Nicyo kintu cyavanywa baje mu ivuga butumwa. Ivuga butumwa ryabo rero babwirizaga umuntu ibyagakiza, bashaka kumugeza kuri Yesu, ariko bakabikora bagaragaza urukundo cyane. Abantu bari bake cyangwa se bari abantu bagenda bashakisha gahoro gahoro, bakabegeranya, bakabereka urukundo, bakababwiriza ubutumwa bwiza. Byaje kugeraho rero wa mu missioneri abona muri urwo rukundo yari afite, abona ba bantu bakunze kurwara, nta buvuzi bwari buri muri aka gace. Noneho rero aravuga atari ko aba bantu bashaka ukuntu mbavura. Mbere yo ibintu bararwaraga cyane byari bisebe. Akora akantu k'akadispenseri gatoya, kadispenseri ka kera kari nkuko tubona centre de santé, ariko centre de santé nini. Yashobora gufata kumba agashaka nk'imiti yoroheje akageza na mu murwayi umwe akamupfuka. Noneho ngo ukuntu yabikoraga, yabaga mupfuka namwe anamubwiriza ubutumwa bwiza, akamuririmbira, akamubwira ati Yesu, nuko akamubwiriza mu ubwo buryo, ariko akamupfukana bya bisebe. Wa wundi wagiye akabwira abandi ati bariya abantu nta nubwo ari kutubwira ijambo ry'Imana gusa ahubwo baranadukorera ibikorwa by'urukundo, babana n'abaturage ba hano hafi gutyo, abo hirya nabo bakajya babyumva bakajya baza baramamaza ubutumwa bwiza banavura.
Today, Kibagora Hospital oversees around 13 health posts and centers and serves a population of over 250,000 people from the surrounding region and neighboring countries Burundi and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Although this is a huge achievement, the money paid by patients is still too low to lead to financial sustainability of the hospital.
In terms of patients' care, really we have been having challenges. One is that the low costs of the healthcare here makes it difficult for the hospital to maintain its workers and to have enough workers. Another thing is that patients, some of the patients don't have medical health insurances, and you find that they come to the hospital and it's difficult for those people to pay these bills. And the third is that we have few healthcare workers, nurses and doctors when you compare it with the number of patients we receive.
Although the missionaries have handed the management of the hospital over to the local 3 Methodist Church, every year a small number of missionaries, mainly medical specialists and educators from around the world, come to visit and serve at the hospital, the church, and the community. By the end of the year, Rachel and Emmanuel will be stationed as new missionary associates at Kibagora to facilitate the transition and collaboration among missionaries, international visitors, the church, and the local community.
We met in 2015 while I was volunteering at Kibagora Hospital and Emmanuel was attending a nearby nursing school.
We were both part of a group of missionaries and students who pray with patients on Sundays.
I think it's really beautiful how God brought us together through ministry, and ever since the start of our marriage, we knew that He had more planned for us in Kibagora.
We are excited to come alongside of our friends in Rwanda to partner with them in an ongoing ministry at Kibagora Hospital, and we see that as our kingdom work.
And our hope is that we would be used to further the redemptive and restoring work that God is doing in Kibagora by providing access to equitable health care in the name of Christ.
For the first time since the first missionaries arrived 80 years ago, Kibagora is going to have a missionary family where the husband is originally from Rwanda, grew up at Kibagora, speaks the local language fluently, and understands the Rwandan culture. Their mission for the next years will be to train the medical staff at the hospital on how they can improve the quality of patient care and use the rest of their time to spread the love of Christ in the local community through various social, educational, and spiritual initiatives.
We're Rachel and Emmanuel, for those of you who don't know us, and we're going to be going to Kibagora, Rwanda for 1 year through Free Methodist World Missions. We're going to be going as associate missionaries. And Kibagora is like a rural hospital in the western province of Rwanda. It's connected with 13 health centers, and it serves a population of 250,000 people. They have a lot of services there. They do pediatrics, they do neonatology, medical, surgical. They have an HIV clinic, an outpatient clinic, dentistry. So they do a lot of things, but they're still limited on staff and resources. And they have, like, when Tamar is the name of the woman who was talking at the beginning. So the hospital has a real history with missionaries and with Free Methodist Church. The hospital started as a dispensary in 1942, and Tamar was kind of sharing a bit about the first missionaries there. Do you want to share what she was saying?
When the first missionaries got there, he wasn't going to start a hospital. He wanted to preach the gospel. But when he got there, he found out that most people have wounds, and they don't have any hospital. No one is treating them. And then he started. He just got a room and he started dressing those wounds. But while doing that, he will sing to people and he will talk to them about Jesus, and then that grew into the hospital they have today and the church. Because after that, he built another small house as a church, and he will do his normal work as dressing wounds and preaching, and then come out Sunday in the church he built.
So throughout the years, ever since the hospital was founded, there's been a partnership with Free Methodist World Missions. And in addition to the hospital and the church, there's also a mission compound there. And traditionally, that's been managed by a missionary, like a Western missionary. And that's now been handed over to local staff, but they've asked for continued partnership. So that's part of what we'll be doing there as well. But we'll get more into that. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So we just wanted to share more on the location of Rwanda. So if you want to go ahead, you can share.
Rwanda is located in Central East Africa. When you look on the African map, it's so hard to see the country because it's very small. It's actually, when you compare it to PA State, is 4 times smaller than PA. But we have the same population though. We have around 13 million people. It's bordering with Republic of Democratic of Congo in the west, and we have Uganda in the east, and we have Tanzania in the north, and Burundi in the south.
Yeah, and then the Kibagora Hospital, when you see on the pink map, you see the lake there, that's Lake Kivu, and Kibagora Hospital is just at the southern tip there of the lake. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So we just wanted to share some challenges that the hospital faces. So they have limited resources and equipment. So what that looks like is kind of rationing supplies. So making sure that you're using gloves for a good reason, searching for gauze, having 2 patients to a bed sometimes, and kind of trying to decide who needs oxygen the most, because there's only so many oxygen concentrators. And you can split the tubing in a way that you can use 1 concentrator for 2 patients, but like stuff like that is something we'd never do here in the States. They have really high staff-to-patient ratios because of their healthcare or their shortage of healthcare workers. So I put some numbers there on the right side. You can see how many physicians and nurses they have for their population, and I put the U.S. numbers for comparison. So a normal ratio in the U.S. for nurses to patients is like 1-4, up to 1-6. That'd be normal. In Rwanda, they're working with ratios of like 1-30. So they also don't have any patient care techs or nurses' aides like we do here. Family members are responsible for bathing and like assisting their family member with any, like if they would need to use the restroom or if they needed help being fed, that'd be up to the family member. So they have to stay with the patient for the length of their stay. They also don't have a dietary department, so families expected to bring in food. And then more providers and specialists are needed. So at Kibagora, they have a lot of volunteers who come in, and they have different programs in place to kind of remedy that. Dr. Ronald is a surgeon that's head of the surgery department now, and he benefited from a program called the PACS program, and that's the Pan-African Academy of Christian Surgeons. So they have surgeons who were trained, some of them here in the States, and then they go over there and train local surgeons. But in the meantime, they really benefit from visitors coming over and working at the hospital still. And then they face the double burden of disease. So they're treating communicable and non-communicable diseases. So they treat a lot of patients with HIV, malaria, things like that, but then they also see patients coming in with cardiac disease or stroke or diabetes. So you can see here on the left, that's a picture of the maternity ward. So you can see most beds have 2 mothers sitting on them, and then the one on the right, you can see there's 2 moms and 2 babies in that bed. So if you can imagine giving birth and then sharing the bed with another mom, it's not just uncomfortable, but it's also, a huge infection control risk. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. The picture on the left there, I just wanted to show some of the old equipment that they're working with. So these tables are used for labor and delivery, and you can see they're just right next to each other, so if you're laboring at the same time. And then this picture on the right is of 2 babies in an incubator in the neonatal ICU. So they're not twins, they just ran out of incubators, so they're needing to share. So we wanted to share kind of what we're going to be doing while we're there for the year. So we're going to be doing a few different things, but first of all, we're going to be nursing. So that looks like caring for patients for one. And I just wanted to share more of why that is valuable, because that's our job. Like, we do that here. Kind of why we're being called to do that there. So with that short staffing that I shared about, it really makes a difference to some patients, the care that we're able to provide when we're there. So when I was there the first time, I had a period where I was kind of doubting why I was there. I thought, why am I here? Am I even making a difference? Does it matter that I'm here? And God sent me some encouragement through a patient on one of my shifts. I went down one morning, and I was caring for a woman who had had her thyroid removed, and she was speaking to me in Kinyarwanda, and her family member could speak some English, and she translated for me. And she says, "God bless you for your great care, and she wishes that you were here every day." And so that really hit me, oh, thank you, God, for that encouragement. And then I wanted to share about Emmanuel and kind of brag about him, but they'll just benefit a lot from the care he can provide too. He worked at a health center when he was there, and when he came here to the U.S., he actually had patients messaging him over WhatsApp, asking him, "Where are you? I need you to take care of me." So we're excited to be called back there to care for patients. And then we're also going to be providing education to nursing staff and nursing students. So I'll let Emmanuel share a little bit about Kibagora Polytechnic, a nursing school there.
Yeah, when you go in partnership with Western people and the church, and they found out we need staff, and they want to establish a school. But when the idea came, the government has its own rules. You need to establish a school, but you need to have this number of people who have PhDs, and we didn't have those people. And then one of Rachel's professor, she's from Pittsburgh. That's how she was sent to Kibagora with a partnership with Better Together, which is an organization from UK, and they come with another guy called David. They came and start working on curriculums, and they established school in 2012. That's when I went to school, and that's where they sent students in so many hospitals, but most of the time they send them to Kibagora Hospital. That's where I will be working with them.
Yeah, and so since they do have such limited staff, sometimes like students are just in the hospital kind of like on their own. So they were really, they really took advantage of me when I was there to use my time to ask me any questions and to gain some more education. And we've worked with them just doing clinical instruction with them before. And then we're also going to just be working with hospital staff to improve the quality of the care. So we're not sure what that will look like yet. It depends on what the needs are when we arrive, but just working on different projects with them to improve care overall. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. Yeah, so we just wanted to share a couple pictures of us there before. So this on the left is me with JMV and Pyrenees in the post-surgical ward. And then on the right, that's a manual and a nurse from the pediatric ward, and we are completing clinical evaluations with some students. And then we're going to be also working at the mission. So we shared a little bit there about the mission compound. So there's the hospital, the church, and the mission compound. And I think I've mentioned that, management of the mission compound has been handed over to local staff, which is really wonderful, but they've asked us to continue a partnership with them and being a part of kind of serving as hospitality at the mission compound. So receiving oncoming short-term missionaries and volunteers there, they still wanted to have a Western missionary presence to receive those people. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. And then other ministries that we're going to be involved in. One of the ways we're going to be involved in ministry is through spiritual rounds. So this is actually how we met. When I was there in 2015, an older missionary couple had started spiritual rounds, and it was a group of volunteers and students, and we would meet on Sundays, and we would have we'd have lunch together, we'd have a time of Bible study, and then we'd go down to the hospital, and we would worship with patients, and then we would visit each bed individually and pray with them. If you want to share more.
Yeah, the spiritual round, how it looked like, it's first when we started, it was 2012, and I was among the first student who joined the group, and the idea was to make sure the spiritual aspect of patients who attend the Kibagora Hospital was addressed. And then we come up with a simple series of questions. One, we will ask them if they are Christian, which like 99% will say yes. And then we'll go ahead and ask them how they know. And then we want them to confess that they are Christian because they believe in Jesus. Most of people will tell you that they are Christian because they got baptized, because they go to church, because they are involved in the churches, and then, which was a very good answer, but that's not what we were looking for. We were looking to see if they can confess that they are Christian because they believe in Jesus, and then we will help them to confess that. And if we find out you are not Christian, we will guide you, and we will pray over you, and then we will ask another question: how do you think you're going to strengthen your faith? And then tell them to pray, and then to read the Bible. That's when we find out that most families doesn't have Bibles in their homes, and with the help for other volunteers, we got some Bibles, and after we pray for you, after we lead you to Jesus, we will give you a Bible, and we can just help you that way.
Yeah, it was really fun. After our spiritual rounds, we would have a list of names for who needed a Bible, and when just passing them out the next day, seeing how excited patients would get to receive a Bible, because it's not as easy to get a Bible there for some people as it is here. So then it says discipleship group. So that's just going to be part of spiritual rounds. So we were the young ones back in 2012 for Emmanuel and 2015 for me. So we just like to, as leaders of the group, we'd like to find younger students and just use that as a way to minister to students as well as ministering to patients. And then community visits. So something I've done there in the past before is working with a social worker from the hospital and then visiting people in the community, taking them food and just praying with them and completing a health check if that's something they need. So actually this picture is of a woman that we visited. Her name's Elizabeth, and this is her standing in front of her home. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. And then that picture on the left there again is of Elizabeth, and we're just giving her some food. And on the right is Tamar. So she's one of the social workers, and you saw her in the video briefly. And she's standing with another woman that we visited on a community visit. You can go to the next slide. Oh, so we just wanted to share a video of us worshiping with the patients prior to praying with them during spiritual rounds one afternoon. So this is in the men's surgical ward. Hopefully this one works. Okay. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so lastly, we just wanted to share some stories about patients that we've cared for when we've been there previously. So this picture on the left is of me with Donatien, and she was somebody that I cared for. I was when I've been there previously, where I've worked with patients is in the post-surgical ICU. So there's 8 beds in there, and that's where like the more sick patients stay, and then anybody who just had surgery. So it's the PACU, the post-anesthesia care unit as well. So I'd be caring for patients just waking up from surgery, or if they were sedated for a dressing change, I'd care for them in there. So Donatien was in there with me for a long while. She was pretty sick when she came in. One of the things we don't usually see here, because typically patients have access to treatment easily and can get it right away, but she had an injury and an infection to her leg, and her bone, she had dead bone in her leg, and if you don't get it treated, your body actually pushes it out to your skin. So she had to have done what's called a sequestrectomy, because that dead bone is called a sequestrum. So she had to have that done. She had to have a skin graft done, and then she was also being treated for parasites while she was there, and she was very withdrawn, very depressed. She'd want her typically during the day, the patients would all have the curtains up, but she wanted her curtains drawn. It seems like she was a little embarrassed of everything, and just to see her, get to care for her, and see her get to improve and heal, and see how she changed, how she started to open up and want to kind of have a relationship and share and talk with me. And so that was just really amazing to watch happen. And then this little girl here on the right, her name's Sandrine, and she was at the hospital being cared for due to cerebral malaria, and she was in a coma. She had been being cared for in the pediatric ward, but then since she was in a coma, she actually developed bed sores. So she came up to the post-surgical ward since she needed daily wound dressings to be done. And so I cared for her in the ICU and just worked with therapy at the hospital to make sure that she was getting range of motion done every day, and so she wouldn't get too contracted. So this is her after she was healed, and smiling little girl running around playing with the other kids in the ward. So that was really special to see happen to how God, his amazing work. So we can go to the next slide. And then this little boy just became really special to me. This is Francois in both pictures. And he kind of showed up at the hospital one day without any family members. We were kind of worried he didn't have parents, but we worked with social work and they tracked down his dad. And Francois had a really bad wound to his arm. He had to have a skin graft. And skin grafts you need to care for it, make sure that it takes and is going to heal well before you send the patient home. And he needed daily dressing changes as well. So he was with us for at least a month. And besides needing those dressing changes after his skin graft, he's a normal little boy, so he wanted to play. So he'd come visit me every day in the post-surgical ICU, and I'd play with him in between caring for patients. And another missionary got close with him as well, and we were able to share about Jesus with his dad, and his dad came to Christ while Francois was a patient with us. And after he was discharged, I kind of just thought I wouldn't see him again, but Tamar, again, that same social worker, arranged a community visit with him and his family. So this picture on the right is when I got the chance to go to his home and visit with him and his family. And so that picture was taken just, right before we were about to leave. And so again, I didn't think I'd get to see him again. But 2 years later, when I was back another time, I wasn't staying right near the hospital this time at the mission compound. I was living with Emmanuel and his family. And it was my first day back to the hospital, and the walk was a little bit further. And I was a little self-conscious and a little nervous on my walk. And I heard this little voice behind me saying my name, and I turned around, and there's Francois. And so that's him on the road. And again, I just took that as God encouraging me and, telling me this is where I was supposed to be. So I think that's the bulk of what we wanted to share. But we say in the video that we're, which you didn't get to see, but we're just really thankful to be part of the redemptive and restoring work that God's doing in Rwanda. And we really see this as a partnership with the local Rwandan staff, and we're really thankful to be a part of that with them and to be a part of the great things that are going on at Kibagora. Lastly, I just wanted to mention, just to tag on to what Dad was sharing at the beginning about how he was called to Malawi. So one of the times that he came home from Malawi, we took an offering the way that he'd seen them do in Malawi. So he laid out a piece of fabric here in the front and, asked people to bring to the front their offerings. And he said that he felt like somebody in our congregation was being called to live in Africa full time. And he just asked that person to come forward. And I was in high school at the time, and I felt like he was talking about me, but I was like, oh no, it's not about me. Just, that feeling that you're not good enough for whatever God's calling you to. And so I just kind of doubted that. And then, years later, to see God's plan for my life unfold, I'm just really thankful for that. And so I just wanted to share that piece too. But I think that's it. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. I was just going to add, if you ever want to, to know more and want to talk to us, ask a question, we'll be able to do that later or in time.
All right. Thanks, Rachel and Emmanuel.